Welcome back to Lehigh Carbon Community College's Workforce Insights, where we explore the trends, challenges, and opportunities that are shaping today's workplace. I'm your host, Wendy Beltzner, and in this episode, we're diving into a fascinating topic that affects leaders at every level: the balance between emotional intelligence and IQ. Today, we'll unpack the real differences between IQ and EQ, how they complement one another, why many organizations still overvalue IQ, and what future-ready leaders can do to strengthen their emotional intelligence in an AI-driven world. Joining me today is Sherri Leggett, a globally experienced leadership and professional development facilitator whose career has spanned corporate operations, pharmaceuticals, and international leadership education. Sherri is the managing director of SL Consulting and previously served as a faculty member for Saudi Aramco's Leadership Development Division, where she worked with leaders for more than 100 different nationalities. She's certified in programs such as Situational Leadership 2, the Leadership Challenge, and Speed of Trust. Sherri's known for her engaging facilitation style that empowers participants to grow both personally and professionally. So welcome to Workforce Insights, Sherri. We're so glad you're here. You've spent decades helping leaders around the world develop their skills. So from your perspective, I'm really interested. My first question begins with, what's the biggest misunderstanding that you feel people have when comparing emotional intelligence to IQ?
That's a really great question. Let me just say thank you for having me before we start. I'm really excited about being here with you today, Wendy. And I'll start answering your question by asking you a question.
All right.
Do you know somebody who's incredibly smart? They have high IQ, but somehow they're stuck in their career. They can solve the toughest problems in the room. They see patterns other people miss. But when it comes to leading people, adapting, building trust, they stall. Most of us can picture somebody like this, right? And if we're
Mhm.
honest, there are moments when we're that person. And here's the thing. One of the biggest misconceptions is this idea that IQ and EQ are in competition. Like you're either smart or you're emotionally intelligent. But that's not how it looks. Think of IQ as the engine and EQ as the steering wheel. IQ powers your ability to think, to solve problems, to analyze. EQ is about understanding yourself, about managing your emotions, about connecting with other people. And they both matter, of course. In leadership, though, EQ is the real differentiator. It's what turns raw horsepower into influence and into real impact that makes a difference in organizations.
Ah, okay. So it's really about linking the two and ensuring that our leaders have both, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think, is there an example that you can share perhaps of where you might have seen this as a misunderstanding?
Yeah, one story that stands out to me is a general manager that I worked with early in his leadership journey. He is incredibly intelligent and he has natural charisma. And this allowed him to get things done and rise in the ranks. But he led almost entirely from IQ and the force of that personality that he has. Um, and on the other hand, he listened only to a few people. In my leadership classes, I call this the same three people syndrome, STP. He treated HR processes like performance management, succession planning as like check the box exercises. From his perspective, they were just formalities and certainly not priority in the
Hmm.
business. Yeah. But once we started focusing in on emotional intelligence, he started to genuinely listen to people, creating space beyond those same three people and using feedback to shape his decisions. And the impact was dramatic. His team performance went through the roof. And I remember him coming to me and saying, Sherry, I finally get the Pygmalion effect. I see the brilliance. That idea that when leaders genuinely have high expectations of
Yeah.
people, see them as capable, that performance goes up. So, long story short, he became a convert. He championed the performance management system. Together, we created a robust succession management system. And today, he's one of the most respected leaders in a multinational organization. He's risen in the ranks and is doing really well.
Yeah.
Not because IQ changed but because he grew his EQ. And that's the power, right, of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. That's encouraging. Wow. It sounds like sometimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, organizations can overvalue IQ in their hiring and their promotion decisions.
Hmm.
Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, another great question because research backs this up. And there's a few reasons, right? IQ is easy to see, right?
Mhm.
We ask for degrees, we ask for test scores, certificates, right? So that's one reason. Another is that we're trained to value IQ. That's what our school systems focus in on. And then there's this bias in organizations, right? That smart equals leader, or so we think so. So many industries equate this idea of emotional intelligence with leaderships. But again, research, hello, Daniel Goldman, shows that past the entry level point, EQ again is the real differentiator for people.
Right. That's great. Yes, I agree. Absolutely agree. So, Sherry, your training has taken you across countries and cultures. Have you noticed differences in how organizations value EQ versus IQ in different parts of the world? And I'm curious what factors you may think shape those preferences.
Really great question. Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed yourself pausing and thinking, that's interesting. They lead differently than I do, and wondered why?
Sure.
Those moments aren't just about personality differences. They really reflect cultural patterns in how we view intelligence, how we view empathy, how we appreciate connection. So, first, let me talk about the US because we're familiar with that. In the US and Western Europe, cultures that lean individualistic and analytical, IQ tends to take center stage. We appreciate people who are sharp, who are thinking, who are fast, who innovate. It's about individual performance. EQ is appreciated, but it's kind of treated like the cherry on top of the cake, right? Not the cake itself.
True.
Now, in less direct cultures, think Saudi Arabia, think Asia, where communication is relational, where people rely on shared understanding. Um, they really focus in on context, unspoken cues. Emotional intelligence plays a totally different role. Here, leadership is about maintaining harmony. It's about showing respect for one another. It's about reading the room like a pro. Empathy isn't a bonus skill, it's baked into how the leaders operate. And
Wow.
then I think finally, different cultures express EQ differently. So some prize restraint, some encourage openness, and neither is more EQ, right? It just shows up differently in the culture and the values. So think about it. In one culture, a leader might demonstrate EQ through deep listening and quiet respect. In another, it might show up as open coaching, public recognition, and like big emotional moments. And again, neither is good or bad. It's just that it shows up differently.
Wow, that is so interesting. I love how you describe the way EQ can look different from one culture to another. It really makes me think about those differences and how they might shape leadership styles. Did you find that leaders in certain regions were more naturally empathetic or emotionally aware?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even think about the US. EQ shows up differently within the US. We're not culturally uniform. There's some great research from the Center of Creative Leadership that points to clear regional differences here in the US. In high tech industries, think the coasts. What do we value? Horsepower, get her done, right? In the Midwest and southern regions, what do we value more? It's more about the relationship, right? So leaders lean more naturally toward empathy, humility, personal connection. And then think about industries in an industry like hospitality, like healthcare. Regardless of the region, EQ is viewed as foundational. It's tied directly to outcomes. So empathy and emotional awareness are part of their DNA. And again, it's not better or worse. It's about understanding the environment you're leading in, or I'll say the environment that you're trying to create and learning how to flex your style as a leader.
Mm. Wow, that's great. You're right. So, if culture shapes how EQ shows up, then that presents a large challenge for global organizations. So, what would your recommendation be on how they can train their leaders to adapt and still be authentic?
Yeah, well, that's at the heart of it, right? And so the best organizations focus on principles over prescriptions. They teach universal EQ foundations like self-awareness, emotional control, um, social influence, and they coach leaders to express those skills that align culturally and or within the organizational context. For example, in Germany, a leader might demonstrate empathy through clarity, through structure, through their follow through. A leader in Saudi Arabia, since I have a lot of experience with that, might show it through warmth, through the personal connection and really relationship building. Uh, both are valid, both are important, and they show up as deeply authentic within that cultural norm. So the goal isn't to make everyone the same.
Mm.
It's to help leaders understand themselves, their values, understand the cultural dynamic that they're operating in, think about what they're trying to create, and flex that approach without losing their authenticity. So I use this phrase, build EQ that travels. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Culture influences how EQ shows up. But what's constant, whether you're in the Lehigh Valley or Louisiana or London, is the impact that it has on people and the impact that it has on teams and thus the business. So, we've seen that low EQ can quietly stifle teams. And even when smart, capable people um, are there, and by the way, all teams have smart, capable people, um, that we won't be able to get things done as well. And that's today. That's today. But think about this real test that's coming up for us, Wendy, with AI
Oh,
and
yeah.
automation. When it when it takes a half an hour to do what it took people days to do, the differentiator isn't going to be the IQ, right? It's going to be how well leaders bring out the best in people to get things done.
You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. We know that EQ is a key differentiator, especially in leadership. Um,
Hmm.
I'm curious, have you ever seen this play out where strong IQ wasn't enough, but emotional intelligence just completely changed the outcome, not only just for the leader, but also for the team?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. Think of the best team that you've ever been a part of. What made it work? Was it the smartest people?
Mm,
The most impressive resumes? Probably not. If you're like most of us, and I'd say you're probably like most of us, what stands out is the trust. It's the feeling among the people, the openness, how they work together. Did they feel heard? Um, Now flip it around and think of a team that on paper had everything, right? They had brilliant talent, off the charts IQ, maybe even big re money resources, but something just never seemed right or clicked. You know the feeling, right?
sure.
It's like all the ingredients are there, but the recipe just doesn't come together. The difference between those two teams, 9 out of 10 times, um, is emotional intelligence, right? And it's the leader's responsibility to build the culture, to build the emotional intelligence of the team. So, earlier I shared a story about a leader who made a shift, right, toward EQ. But what was really powerful about that story wasn't just his growth, it was what happened within our organization. Once he started leading with empathy, with clear communication, and genuine listening to people, um, the ripple effect was huge. He was asking for people's opinions and their ideas. And people just didn't do their jobs. They really leaned in, right? They were contributing more, they were challenging more, they were sharing feedback. So it brought new energy to the organization. And this isn't an isolated story across many industries. You can gather lots of research about this, and I've seen this happen as we've instituted EQ in organizations. So the thing is that teams that rely on IQ can run hot for a while,
Hmm.
but they plateau. There's untapped potential sitting in these organizations, and EQ unlocks that for us. So when we talk about high performing teams, it's not just about smarts, it's about whether people feel seen, heard, and respected, and will make the contributions that we need. And that's the real key difference.
Wow, Sherry, that's a powerful example. It really shows how EQ can unlock potential that IQ alone can't. But I'm just wondering if that leader would have ignored EQ, what do you think the long term consequences would have been for that team?
Hmm. Well, I'll start with a story that I share often in my process improvement classes um, about his performance before we started focusing on IQ. So imagine this. One of our number one customers flagged some serious packaging errors, the kind that can cause some trouble in your business.
Uh-oh.
And, think contract issues, think about reputation, think about future business. So he jumped right into fix mode. This is who he was. And then one of his directors offered a confident solution. They said, from now on, every room startup must be approved by a QA specialist. Sounds smart, right?
Hmm.
More checks, more control, problem solved. Except it wasn't.
Oh, no.
No. Before this rule, room startups took about 20 minutes. They're pretty quick, smooth, efficient. After the rule, up to 3 hours.
Oh, my.
So every team had to stop, wait for a QA to arrive. The work piled up, schedules slipped. Can imagine people were frustrated. And here's the kicker, the original packaging errors, they still kept happening.
Oh,
So the
gosh.
solution didn't even touch the real problem. It just added on to our problems at that time.
Wow.
So this is where EQ really matters. If the GM had slowed down and really listened, not to just one confident, loud, quick voice, um, but to other people on the ground, in the thick of things, they would have heard a different story. Um, they would have uncovered the real root cause, and that would have built trust instead of frustration. So instead of one top-down decision made under pressure,
Hmm.
creating a bigger mess, we could have fixed the issue. And that kind of micromanagement sticks around. The damage doesn't show up overnight, right? It just compounds. Truth stops flowing, psychological safety collapses, innovation dries up. People quietly walk out the door. It's not a sudden crash that happens. It's a slow suffocation of the culture. And the scary part is that it usually catches organizations by surprise because on the surface, things look smart, but underneath, the fire is smoldering.
Mm.
So that's the long-term issue.
So, Sherry, looking toward the future, you mentioned AI a few moments ago and the fact
Mm,
that it's taking over more of the technical IQ driven tasks.
yeah.
With this change, how do you see the role of emotional intelligence evolving and especially the demands that it will place on new leaders?
Hmm. Well, here's the big shift. AI is getting better at IQ every single day, but it still can't lead people. Think about it. The technical expertise that made someone indispensable now is often augmented or automated.
Mhm.
And what took a person days to do takes minutes for AI to do. So, what's left is our humanness, right? It's our ability to build trust. It's our ability to navigate complexity, to build relationships, share vision, create meaning for people.
Right.
And that's where emotional intelligence is not just a differentiator, but it becomes core leadership currency. I see two big shifts from knowledge to connection. The technical know-how will always matter, but leaders will win through their ability to connect.
Mhm.
Um, and from control to empowerment. So as work becomes more distributed across cross-functional teams, leaders can't rely on this top-down control. They need emotional intelligence to influence, to lead without authority, and to create psychological safety in these hybrid global teams. And here's the catch, Wendy. AI and automation are only as good as the information that we feed them.
True.
If leaders don't foster environments where people feel safe to tell the truth, share their concerns, surface tough issues, the raw data going into those systems is going to be biased, incomplete. So, emotional intelligence isn't just a people skill here, it's about data integrity. So, without honest input, even AI was going to give you skewed answers.
That's true.
And here's the nuance, and I think this often gets missed. AI can actually help us as leaders become better at leading teams if we use it wisely. So it's our ability to use AI. And by using AI to build knowledge, to share information with people, we can free up time and cognitive space to really focus in on leading people, not just managing tasks, but really to help us adapt our teams. We can use AI. And when we pair classic process tools, let's say, like structured brainstorming, cause and effect tools, decision making tools, we can create teams that are both technically sharp and
Right.
emotionally engaged. And so AI can handle the data. We as leaders, we can handle the dialogue. And that's where I see it coming together and in this beautiful kind of orchestrated dance, if you will.
Wow, that's a great reminder. Absolutely. Technology may be advancing, but human connection is still central. Do you
Mhm.
think organizations are preparing leaders fast enough for this shift?
Well, according to the research, no. Um, a lot of organizations are focusing in on training for yesterday's leadership. And meanwhile, AI is advancing at lightning speed. And if organizations don't build EQ intentionally now, um, they'll end up with leaders who are technically brilliant, but culturally unfit for the world of work. Um, Good references for your listeners are studies from Korn Ferry, DDI, Human Business Impact, just to name a few, and you can check those out. And of course, AI can help you find those studies rather quickly.
Oh, thank you. Those are great resources. And I think that's a great description. Technically brilliant, but culturally unfit. So,
Mhm.
for those professionals who pride themselves on their intellect and may struggle a bit, what's the first practical step that they can take to strengthen their EQ so it complements rather than competes with their IQ?
Hmm. Well, have you noticed how some of the smartest people in the room don't always have the biggest impact? Or maybe you've walked out of a meeting thinking, I know I was right. So why didn't it land? Why didn't I get heard? This is such a smart question because many high IQ individuals, EQ can feel like it's competing, right, for space. They built their careers on being the problem solver, the expert, the person with the answers. So the first step is actually changing our mindsets, right? How we think about leadership. The most powerful starting point, I think, is really simple. Pay attention to the impact that you're having. When you leave that room, start to think about what impact you've had. For a week, just notice when walking into a room, starting a meeting, sending an email, what happens to the people around you? Do they lean in? Do they want to know more? Do they shut down?
Mm,
Do they contribute more? Do they contribute less? And don't judge yourself, right? Just notice. So, no fixing,
yeah.
just observe. So, this awareness is the foundation of building emotional intelligence because you can't shift what you can't see.
That's great advice. Absolutely. Well, and for those who are already in leadership role, what's one daily practice that they could begin using tomorrow to make their EQ more visible, especially to their teams?
Well, I'll continue on this idea of awareness. So, one of the simplest things is you can do a quick check-in, right? Once a day, maybe start a team meeting or a one-on-one, or maybe just popping over to see somebody with, hey, how's everyone doing? What's getting in your way? What's one thing that would make your life easier today? And I also like setting ground rules and boundaries. I think they're super important. Um, One that I used in my career, and I'll say this is unique to Sherri, so it's the authentic Sherri, is the rule I have with my teams is just spit it out and we'll clean it up later. And the whole idea, well, you get it, right? It's a simple
Sure.
request and it gives people permission to be open and honest without overthinking. Now, of course, I have to accept that. I have to be emotionally intelligent to say, okay. But the idea is you don't want red lights for people, right? You don't want them to hesitate. You don't want them to hold back. You want the real stuff. You want it early when it's fixable. Um, so obviously you can fix the issues that are happening. And honestly, we all have little frustrations, right? Things that we do that cause frustrations. But when people know that you're genuinely there to help, they tend to overlook those small things. They give you grace. They have goodwill towards us. Um, and when you do this consistently, people will open up more, issues will surface faster, better decisions are going to be made. And that's EQ in action, right? Simple, make it visible, and make it contagious to build your team and your team's performance.
Wow, those are some great takeaways today. Sherri, thank you for joining us and for sharing such valuable insights into why emotional intelligence isn't just a soft skill, it's really a leadership superpower.
Thank you for having me. I really had a good time sharing some information with you and spending some time with you.
Thank you. Today's conversation is a reminder that leadership success isn't just measured by what we know, but by how we connect. When leaders grow their EQ, teams thrive. If building capable, emotional, intelligent leaders is part of your vision, now's the time to equip your team with the tools to make it happen. We invite you to join us for our upcoming EQ workshop on Thursday, December 4th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on our main campus in Schnecksville. This highly interactive session will help team members better understand themselves, communicate with empathy, and respond to challenges with composure and confidence. Visit ltric.edu to reserve your seats and experience the difference EQ can make across your organization. This has been Workforce Insights, excellence for every leader at every level. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.